People always ask me, what are your goals? I'm like, I have no goals. And they're like, but how do you run a multiple 7-figure business in your coaching institute? How do you do all of these things? And I genuinely let them come to me. When I surrendered to that, instead of having my goals of, I want this and I want to make money and I want to, everything in my life shifted. If people are so afraid of the feminine rising that they would rather force you to jail and force you to cover up than allow you to be in your power, it shows how freaking powerful we actually are. A lot of women have careers where they were not in alignment with their soul's purpose. So they equate working with working towards something that they don't want to do. And I don't want to do that, so I'd rather find some guy to save me. However, those aren't the only two options.
Just flow, surrender, let go. Yeah. Just flow, surrender, let go. I'm the one I've been waiting for. Just flow, surrender, let go. Just flow, surrender, let go. Just flow, surrender, let go. I'm the one I've been waiting for.
Welcome back to the High Self Podcast. My name is Sahara Rose, and on this episode, I love to talk about divine feminine spirituality. So specifically in this episode, a question that I often get is, how do I be more in my feminine? And what are some tips to enhance my radiance so I can be the goddess that I'm here to be? So I'm someone that has been not just studying the divine feminine for over a decade, but really living it. And I'll be sharing more about my unique experience and some hacks that honestly no one speaks about. I feel like a lot of the space out there on the divine feminine is very surface level. And actually to really shift your energy and the way that people interact with you, it comes from really tuning into this deeper place within that most women have never accessed. And for those of you who've been listening to me on this podcast for 8 years now, you have likely seen the shift in myself, really anchoring into my own feminine. And it has not just been about what I wear or how I do my hair, but rather it is about my state of embodiment. So in this episode, I'm going to share little tips and secrets that no one talks about, but I got you, girl. And let's get into it. And before we drop into this episode, be sure to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. That is the best way to stay up to date on the latest episodes. We've got this in video format, so if you're just hearing my voice, be sure to also watch our fabulous outfits on video as well on Spotify, YouTube, or the Apple Store. This is the best way to stay in the flow with future conversations and also allows the podcast to reach more people. So hit subscribe so I can keep vibing with you on all future episodes. Now let's get into this one. So first, what is the divine feminine? Well, personally, I actually prefer the term sacred feminine. To me, the word sacred is ancient. It comes from the earth. It is something that is revered. I love the word divine as well, but I feel like the word divine actually inherently has a slightly more masculine consciousness to it. So divine is universal. It is connecting to source. It is to be with the cosmos. So it has kind of like an upper feeling to it. It's in the higher chakras and connecting to the crown and above. Whereas the word sacred to me, and I invite you to really sit and to be in your feminist, to sit with subtleties, to sit with words and to go a little bit deeper. So sit with the subtlety of divine and sacred and tune into what feels resonant for you. To me, sacred is a little bit more revered. It's a little bit more pulled back. It's something that, you don't just like go scroll up to a sacred site. You prepare yourself for the sacred site. And that is how the feminine is meant to be. We are altars. If you haven't heard my new album, My Body is an Altar, it is all about that transmission that I got after my divorce of realizing that I am a sacred site. The sacred site is nowhere outside of me, but is my own being. And it's how I show up, and that every person I interact with, to give them an experience that is bringing them to a higher level of consciousness, not from me trying to teach or coach them, but simply by being in my own presence. And how can I continue to cultivate that sacred resonance within myself? So to me, the word sacred is a word of great reverence, and to really imagine yourself walking as if you have rose petals at your feet. So let's start with that, the embodiment of the feminine. To me, to embody the feminine is the path of the priestess. Priestesses were ancient archetypes that have existed in every civilization around the world, from ancient Egypt, Kemet, to India, to the Celtic, the list goes on. And these were women who were, almost like half human, half goddess. They are women who devoted their lives to ritual and ceremony and dance and music and herbs and astrology and connecting to the natural ways. And so if you're listening to this and you've always felt a draw to these things, a draw to the unknown, a drawn to intuition and plants and connecting to children and animals and doing ritual and practice and sitting in circle. And, maybe the time you were a kid, you were like making potions. You are likely a reincarnated priestess. So you are someone that carries these codes. You carry this remembrance that you are a sacred site and you are someone that is here to bring forth beautiful experiences. So this is really what the divine sacred feminine is about. I feel this word has kind of been minimized to be this like game that people play to try to get a dude. And that actually is hyper masculine because it's performative and it's very goal oriented. And to attune to the sacred feminine is to attune to being a place of not having goals anymore. And it's funny because people always ask me, they're like, what are your goals? I'm like, I have no goals. And they're like, but how? Like, how do you run a multiple 7-figure business? How do you produce these podcasts in your coaching institute? How do you do all of these things? And I genuinely let them come to me. I genuinely live in this place of creativity and flow that I am divinely inspired by everything that I co-create. And I say the word co-create because I'm no longer trying to force things to happen, but rather I'm in dialogue with the universe. And I'm asking Source every single day, please use me as a vessel. I ask you to give me the insights and ideas that I am meant to share with the collective and specifically to the people who cross paths with me. Let me be a vessel for the goddess. And when I surrendered to that, instead of having my goals of like, I want this and I want to make money and I want to, blah, 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 which is all masculine. When I instead said, I put my hands up and surrender. And Spirit, you lead me. You show me the way. Everything in my life shifted. Not only did I actually make so much more money, but from a place of ease and flow. Because before it felt like I had to like figure something out. Like there was like some kind of like business secret that I did not know. And I was spending all my time like signing up for people's email things and trying to figure out their funnel and their copywriting. This is like back in maybe 2017. And I feel that that's helpful and that also we can't fully go into our divine feminine without being in our masculine as well. And I'll come back into that because it is an integration. However, it's to bring forth your inner masculine. And maybe right here is a good place to really dissect what these two energies are. So when I say feminine and masculine, you've heard every spiritual teacher say this, I am not referring to the genders. I am referring to the energies. And every being, mas, non-binary, we all have feminine and masculine attributes to us. Tends to be those that are born in a woman's body have more feminine energy because we have wombs. The womb is the most feminine portal on earth. It is literally the feminine. It is literally the hologram of life. It is what everything has been birthed through. So whether you want to have children or not, your body has the hologram for creating life. And creativity is the essence of the feminine. So because we literally came with these vessels of feminine energy, we're naturally going to be operating with more feminine. On top of that, it comes with our menstrual cycles. It comes with higher estrogen. And I'm just speaking at it from a very biological level right now. So it makes sense why women would have more feminine energy. However, there are some women that are naturally born with more masculine energy, and all are needed. What I have found, though, is for a lot of us, and I've been working with thousands of women over the past 10 years in the divine feminine space, that a lot of us were born in our feminine. We loved arts as a children. We loved creativity. We loved expression. We loved playing with our dolls and our friends and our pets. And, we wanted to be singers and dancers and take care of dolphins. Like that was definitely my dream. But then we had to sign up for these school systems that made us sit down and be quiet and tighten up and raise your hand to go to the bathroom and you're not allowed to go and study and memorize. And it trained us to become like men because these schools were indoctrination for factory workers. That's the actual history of it during the Industrial Revolution. So we were literally trained as these like creative beings to like sit down and be quiet and like produce and memorize. And disconnect from our creativity and instead focus on memorization, which is not inherent to either, by the way. And then we wonder why then being in our feminine feels foreign to us. Well, also, if you think about the feminine place of creativity, intuition, flow, it's also the unknown. The feminine cannot be plotted and rationalized and figured out. The feminine is emotional. So our society is extremely afraid of the feminine because the feminine brings forth truth. When you are a divine feminine being, you may have noticed this, whoever you are sitting in front of has some sort of experience. Some people might be very triggered by you, just by your existence. And women as well, maybe especially those who have not tuned into their own divine feminine energy will see you and be very triggered by you. And they'll be like, who does she think she is? She's trying too hard. She's this, she's that. And it's their own, inner reflection of the ways that they are not tuned into their feminine. And then men who are afraid of the feminine, likely mother wound. I'm sure you've dated it. And so they tend to repel women who are in their divine feminine because before we are in our divine feminine, we are in our wounded feminine. And the wounded feminine is a place of manipulation. It's a place of being the victim. It's a place of trying to use other people to get your needs met. And it was a survival mechanism because for the past 2,000 years of patriarchal and colonialist rule, women have not had access to resources. So the only way that they would have food, shelter, safety was to attune to a man's needs before their own. And so she had to appeal to getting a husband and then satisfying that husband and, doing whatever he needed simply so she could stay in the house and continue to be fed. And this is still the case in many parts of the world, including where I am from, Iran. So I share this because it makes sense why you are no longer in that divine feminine energy that you were born with. It makes sense why you forgot. It makes sense why you may feel more comfortable being in your masculine. Now, what is that masculine energy? Well, it's that drive. It's the hustle. It's setting goals. It's motivation. It's organization. It's confinement. And so if you've ever worked a corporate job, I've just listed all the attributes of one. Like, be in your cubicle, or even now they don't even have them, but it's still very masculine. Your screen is being recorded. You have to be producing this much at this amount of time. You're being checked on. There's a hierarchy of your higher ups and they're looking at you and you're being analyzed for everything. And if you don't hit those KPIs, then you're out. And this is super masculine conditioning, and it's not even sacred masculine. We'll talk about sacred and wounded masculine maybe in another episode because there's so much to this. And let me know if you want to continue on this theme. But a lot of us, we've been in both wounded masculine and feminine energy, right? We go to college, get a job. We have to attune to this masculine consciousness. However, what happens is we're feminine beings forcing ourselves to perform and be like a man because we're taught that that is what's needed for success. And then we go home and then it's like the tears come out, eating tubs of ice cream, not really knowing how to process your emotions, going on social media, comparing yourself to girls that you feel like are skinnier and prettier than you and have easier lives, and then getting jealous about that and feeling like you're too ugly, too fat, too old, no one cares about you. And then maybe going into these how can I seduce a guy using this? And these are all just different shapes and forms of that wounded feminine energy. That wounded feminine energy that just believes her in her own beingness is not enough, that she needs to be someone else, do something else, perform, or even go, and there's different ways. Some women go hyper masculine of, it is not safe for me to be in my feminine energy. So I'm going to hustle and be and dress and act as a man. Otherwise, it's not safe. And it totally makes sense. Sexual harassment cases, it makes sense. And then on the other end, there are women who, decide, I'm just going to find I want to be the trad wife. I want to, be the rich Pilates trophy wife, which you see that all over social media right now. So let me find the sugar daddy. Let me find some man to get me out of this masculine construct, because I think the only way I can be in my feminine is again through a man. And so this is what's really, guys, right now is like being in your feminine is like being a trophy wife to some guy that you feel will save you. And this essence of wanting to be saved is still the wounded feminine. It's still that maiden consciousness that's looking for someone else, a man at that, to save them from themselves. And so I invite you to just notice any threads of these patterns within yourself, in your past. It's, sometimes easy to look at them in other people, but they all exist within ourselves. I know I have, in some level, been on both ends of the spectrum. So just noticing that, being aware of that, being aware of what your patterns are. When you're stressed out or a relationship doesn't work, do you go hyper independent, I don't need a man? Or do you go hyper dependent of someone save me? Because these are still survival mechanisms that make sense. And the missing link is the divine feminine. Because when you are self-sourced in your divine feminine, you don't need either of those things. So a woman in her divine feminine has likely gone through a dark night of the soul. I talk a lot about dark nights of the soul here. I will link one of my episodes below, as well as my music video for my song, Sexy Dark Night of the Soul. But a dark night of the soul is when you are living your worst nightmare. It is when something really big happens in your life that you have no choice but to change everything. Could be a divorce, could be a job loss, could be a health crisis, could be a death in the family, could be an anxious breakdown. It could be anything. I know you're probably already thinking about yours. So the gift that happens in the dark night of the soul is you touch deeper levels of pain and grief and suffering than you've ever tasted before. You've gone to the bottom of the barrel, as I like to call it. And when you've tasted that level of pain and despair, something comes alive in you. And all of a sudden, you open up your heart to be able to feel so much more. You become so much more radiantly alive. And all of a sudden, you are feeling things to a level that you've never felt before. You watch a TikTok video of a puppy and you're just crying. You're like, oh my God, why am I so emotional right now? That means the dams have come undone. So congratulations. And you're beginning to feel all of the suppressed energy in your heart. So this is actually a beautiful thing. And for a period of time, you might just be like, why am I so emotional? Or why am I seeing so many synchronicities? Or I feel like really just intuitive right now. That is your divine feminine coming online again. So this is really your opportunity. That's your glow up moment. I have another podcast below on how to step into your main character energy, but this is really when that true divine feminine embodiment starts to come online. So I want to talk about some specific tips that you can do if you're in that portal of having your divine feminine awakening. So the first one is movement. I invite you every single day when you wake up in the morning to play at least one song, create a sensual playlist for yourself. I love Sabrina Claudio, Alina Baraz, Nagika, and of course I have my album as well. I will link my Body is an Altar playlist with my favorite sensual feminine songs below so you can listen to them. And I invite you to just move your body, even if you're just sitting upright on your bed. But I want you to move your body, especially in circular motions. So circling your neck, your shoulders, your chest, and then really coming down to your hips. So your hips are where you store your sacred feminine energy. Again, this is where your womb is. This is where the hologram of life is. So in your hips, when you start to circle them, you start to stir that energy up and you are opening up your sacral, your Sarasvati chakra. So this is the chakra related to sensuality, creativity, abundance, pleasure, womb wisdom. It's related to the color orange. So having, orange roses, citrine, things that bring forth that orange sacral energy will really support this. So simply just moving your body, and even throughout the day, can you bring some circular motions to what you're doing? That is going to bring awareness to your hips, because most of us are walking around pretty tight-assed, we're all like clench, clench, clench. And we're taught like as kids to suck everything in, and actually sucking in your belly is what is holding back your sacred feminine energy. I really invite you right now to just completely exhale and let your belly just hang loose. So this is something that I really began learning when I started belly dancing. So when I was around 15 years old, I started to really train in belly dance. And it's been a big part of my life and my divine feminine awakening. But in belly dance, if you've seen belly dancers, they let their stomachs hang free, and so much of the movement comes from the belly rolls and the undulations and isolations. And if you're watching this video, you're seeing me roll my belly as I'm speaking right now, because I'm always doing this all the time. I'm like driving and rolling my belly. And it's funny because I could not naturally do it. I feel like some people naturally can. And I invite you, bringing awareness to your belly of, can you do the rolls coming down and then practice them coming up? So the coming down energy is bringing that energy from your head, from your heart down to your womb. And then the bringing it up energy is circulating that energy from your womb upwards, and start to notice which one feels more comfortable and easy for you. And I have a whole workshop called Healing and Embodiment Through Dance. I'll link that below, where I really dive into how to use belly dancing and tribal forms of movement for your sacred feminine energy. So I will link that below as well. So I share this because when we're walking around with tight jeans on and a polyester thong and clenching our ass cheeks, like, no wonder we don't have sacred feminine energy. If you look at women from around the world, they wore loose skirts, no underwear. They were connected to earth. And we don't have that anymore. And then we wonder why we feel disconnected. So many women I see, like, the only time they move their hips maybe is during sex. And then they wonder why they aren't able to receive pleasure. Well, they don't know how to move their hips in the way that would bring forth their pleasure. So bringing that energy back, just starting with hip circles, and you can also do figure eights. Figure eights are really great for moving energy in the body. You can do them figure eights down, figure eights up. These are called mayas and taksims. And you can also do different undulation patterns like body waves. So these are all things that are going to bring forth that awareness to your womb space, awareness to your sacral chakra. Because it's like, if I've never moved my hand for like 50 years, and then I have to like do mudras with my hand, there's no way I'd be able to do it. I don't have the ambidextry. So how do we expect to have that ambidextry, that fluidity of the hips and of the womb, if we've never actually connected with it? So start with dance, especially belly dancing, free flow styles of movement. And I will also share my free daily embodiment practice below, which is a free practice you can do. I have lots and lots of resources. I've dedicated my life to this work, especially because I come from a country where none of this is legal, Iran. So I'm like, how do I, bring forth the very thing that women where I'm from are thrown in jail for? It's freaking crazy, but it shows the fear of the feminine. If people are so afraid of the feminine rising that they would rather force you to jail and force you to cover up than allow you to be in your power, it shows how freaking powerful we actually are. And we're already rising. It's already happening. So the next tip I want to give you is around your breath. I love breath work. However, I feel the breath works that have become popularized today are the breath works created by men for men. I love Wim Hof breathing. I did it for years. However, it was continuing to just practice my masculine energy. Or if I'm just doing seated meditations and I'm like kind of disconnected from the breath, it's important to do seated meditations because it connects you to Atma, universal source consciousness, to that like source energy. And that is equally important because we need to cultivate that masculine within ourselves. However, when we want more of that feminine, that suppleness, that aliveness, that richness, we need to focus on the exhales. And we must allow the exhales to be longer than the inhales. So let's tune into the energetics of a breath. They say how you breathe is how you live. And you can actually just look at the way that someone breathes and see so much about how they lead their lives. So when we inhale, we are taking in life, we are taking in information, we are taking in energy, and then we are holding it. So this is a process of life. We have to inhale in life. We must open up and get that breath and hold it in. However, once we've held it, we have to then let it go. Let it go, soften, exhale, release, and then be in that state of emptiness, which is that state of stillness, of complete surrender. Now, which one of these breaths do you feel energetically is more feminine or masculine? So for me, I feel when we inhale and we hold, it's like me holding a plank. It's like, how long can I hold myself together? Can I hold in all of this information I'm getting from the world, all of the text messages and email threads and this, that? How much can I hold the chaos of the world, the chaos in my family even? Hold. So that to me almost feels like a soldier, right? Holding it all together. And then when I exhale, I'm letting it go. I'm softening, I'm releasing, I'm surrendering, I'm letting myself be in this unknown, which is inherently more feminine. Now, you may be wondering, well, what about the mother of a family? She is holding it all together. But that mother in the family, when she is not supported and she feels like she's, again, even when I did that little example, I all of a sudden held my breath. That hold your breath energy is the masculine. And again, it's not her fault. And especially, women who are kind of forced into single mother situations because of the abandonment of the womb, it breaks my heart because they are forced into their masculine. They have to be the mother and father of the family. And I give my highest respect to those queens. And if you are one, like, I bow down to you. And it's a lot. And I feel we really need to speak into the fact that no woman is meant to do it all. No woman is meant to entirely run a household by herself, on top of taking care of the kids, but also being the provider. That is a lot of energy to hold. So a lot of mothers, even if there are husbands at home, feel that tight, hold it all together, because if I take a moment to exhale, it all might fall apart. So even if you're deep in motherhood, you still may be operating from that masculine consciousness. And that doesn't mean it always has to be that way, but it means you get to put in that extra time and intention towards the movement practice, towards the exhales, towards softening, even if it's just in your 15-minute practice a day, because that can nourish you for the whole rest of the day. And then as you're going through life, because you've practiced that energy, it's going to start to come up naturally within you, and then it starts to manifest in the world outside of you. We can share more about that on the podcast as well. Let me know if you're more interested in how, when we shift our beliefs and our embodiment, the world around us shifts as well. And we actually begin to call in support. So let me know if you're interested in that. So I share this because most moms you see are operating from their masculine simply because they're not supported, simply because a woman was not meant to do it all on her own. We were meant to live in tribes with community that are all supporting one another, where women can be in their zones of genius, and we all raise the children collectively. That is the design. However, because of this nuclear family system, again, the toxic masculine, it separated families apart. So everyone just focuses on their work. And so we're experiencing the effects of that right now. But I also feel that so many people are awakening and remembering that this is not natural to us. So this feminine, masculine energy, both are inherent within ourselves. And the next tip I want to give to enhance your feminine energy is actually to cultivate your masculine. So I see a lot of women who are in their wounded feminine energy, their princess energy, who are waiting for the guy to save them, to sweep them off their feet, to pay for their entire lifestyles and, save them from themselves. And I see they often end up in these situations because they haven't cultivated their healthy masculine. They are afraid of stepping into their full power because in the past, they have equated power with negative. They are afraid of power. They have seen people in toxic positions of power. So they, on a subconscious level, feel if I become powerful, then I'm not going to be a good person. So I would rather remain weak. But I still need to find someone else to be powerful because I don't want to cultivate that energy within myself. So let's shift that word from power to empowered. What does the word power feel like to you? Maybe that word does feel really masculine, red, hungry. But then what does the word empowered feel like to you? Empowered, it's coming from within. It's a state of being. So that is the word I really want you to tune into. And I feel a lot of women have had positions, careers where they were not in alignment with their Dharma, their soul's purpose. So they equate working with working towards something that they don't want to do. And so then they become afraid of just working in general. And they think to work, to make money means I have to do something I really don't want to do. I have to go into that shitty corporate job where I hate all my colleagues and I'm waiting to clock out. And I don't want to do that. So I'd rather find some guy to save me. However, those aren't the only two options. The highest option, the option that you really want, is to make your money doing something that you naturally love and something that keeps you in your feminine energy. So these are things where your feminine is being valued, such as coaching, therapy, arts, creativity, design, anything where you are using your creativity, your heart, your ability to connect. And there are many, many positions within companies you can do that as well. And when you start living your Dharma, your soul's purpose, and doing what makes you come alive, then all of a sudden something shifts within you. And you're no longer trying to perform at this job to get this paycheck, but rather you are in a natural state of being. And you are tapped into your highest form of self. You're literally like tuned into life force energy that it feels like more energy than your body has ever carried before. And I see a lot of women who feel like they're in their divine feminine, like, I just want to sleep all day. That's not the divine feminine. You're likely just healing from toxic masculine environment. Like you worked this really tough New York City job, so you just want to rest for a year, and that makes total sense. But the divine feminine, you rest to create. It's not the goal is just to rest and coast, but rather it is to nourish yourself so then you can take that life force energy and share in the way that you are meant to. So living your Dharma is actually really beyond masculine and feminine because it is the birthright of every single person. And to me, it is the number one reason why we are here. It is our highest calling, is to live that sacred purpose that the universe, source consciousness chose us to be in this lifetime. And I've written a whole book on it, Discover Your Dharma, with foreword by Deepak Chopra. And I also have a free masterclass about tuning into your own Dharma, and I will link those below. So I find when a woman is not living her Dharma, she is afraid of working. She equates it with doing something she doesn't want to do. And then so she's looking for someone to essentially finance her. And then she tells herself these stories of, well, women aren't supposed to work. And I want someone who's going to fully support me. I want someone who's fully in his masculine. But if you really go underneath it, it's, I don't actually know what I like to do. And I think that that's important to admit to yourself of maybe you will or you won't. That doesn't matter. But what matters is how do you spend your days? Even if someone was entirely providing for you, you might think you want a vacation forever, but that's going to get boring after a period of time. And trust me, like I don't have to be here right now. I want to be here right now. Because this gives me more joy than me just like sitting around and like looking at my gorgeous beachfront view. I could do that, but I don't want to because I'm living my Dharma. And I share this because that is that true sacred feminine energy when she is of service, when she is sharing her gifts on a higher level. You know, that's queen energy, right? The princess is, oh my God, I want to find the prince so I can like wear the jewelries and the crown and the gown and like be saved. The queen energy is like, okay, how do I want to make the village a better place? How do I want to expand the empire in a way that is through the heart? The queen's not sitting around, you know, just looking at her jewelry in the mirror. The queen is an empress, you know, she is a priestess. If we think about Cleopatra energy, she's extremely empowered, extremely sovereign. And from that place of energy, she magnetizes the king. So when we're operating in that princess energy of looking for the rich guy to save us, we're only going to attract someone in their wounded prince energy who like is getting off on trying to be the hero in the story. And it's going to end up in a really gnarly trauma bond. I think we've seen that time and time again. But rather, when we go on our own journey of sacred union within ourselves, of marrying that feminine masculine energy through attuning to our purpose, attuning to our greater sense of self. And that doesn't have to be something really big. It could be volunteering your time. It could be, making candles and selling them on Etsy. It could be doing coaching sessions around the divine feminine or Dharma coaching. I have a whole school, Highest Self Institute. If you're interested in becoming any type of spiritual life coach, we have 4 different certifications, so you can get accredited in that. We'll also link that below. And I share this because I see so many women who come in with that wounded feminine energy of, I don't know what I'm going to do. I had this really toxic job. I had to quit it, but now I need to meet someone or figure something out because I don't know how I'm going to provide for myself. And that's a really vulnerable position for a woman to be in. But when we can attune to our Dharma and we can start to listen to the language of the universe of, where am I being guided? Where am I being called? And how can I be of service? And that's a really different energy from, I need to figure it all out right now. But instead, we're in that leaned back throne, that Beyonce energy. And we're actually in co-creation. We're in conversation with the universe. We're again saying, Spirit, lead me. Ask me how I can best be of service. Ask me who to speak to and when and what to say. I am here to be your vessel. I really invite you to just say that prayer, and you can rewind it and say that prayer, write it down. And every morning, every night, just say that prayer and just start to notice what shows up. Start to notice the questions you're asked. People saying, hey, can you help me with this? Can you give me advice on that? I'm curious about this. I really notice how you do that. Just start to notice those things, because that is your Dharma coming to you, telling you in whispers, this is the path. And when we live our dharmas, it actually brings us into our true feminine energy, which is that exalted queen energy, who is sovereign, who knows herself, who is empowered, who is abundant, who has her own castle. And she can decorate it however she wants. And then from that place, she can call in her king, because she's not jumping ship, but rather she's steady. She's patient. She can wait. She's not desperate. She's not trying to make something happen. She's not carrying these stories of, I'm going to get too old and no one's going to care about me. That's all princess shit. And by the way, princess consciousness can exist for the rest of our lives. But we step into that queen frequency, that highest self frequency. And that can only come from marrying the sacred feminine and masculine. We step into this deeper womb gnosis, this deeper womb knowing of knowing our power, knowing our worth, knowing our creativity, knowing our gifts, knowing our soul. And from that place, that is truly how we become magnetic. So I share this because I feel most of the information on the internet of how to become more divine feminine is wear dresses and wear pink. And yes, those are great tips as well. But you could also be wearing black pants and be divine feminine. You can have pretty long curled hair. I did a little Hollywood do today. It does feel very feminine, but you could also have a shaved head and be very feminine. You could adorn yourself with gorgeous gold jewelry like an Indian goddess, or you could have mud on your body and still be feminine. The external doesn't really matter, because a woman who is in her feminine is in her heart. She's in her womb. She's in her sense of self. She's in her Dharma. And so it doesn't matter if she's, frolicking in trees covered in leaves. It doesn't matter if she is in a gown. It doesn't matter if she's in her boss business suit. It's an energy of knowing and holding herself like the faja, in indigenous wisdom, in Mayan womb wisdom. You wrap around your womb space every day in a faja. It's like a cloth that you tie yourself around with. And it's believed because we hold so much energy in our womb to really hold it together. And as I was studying with the elders there, what really came to me was to energetically hold myself like the faja, to not be front of seat energy that's trying to connect, trying to get a word in, trying. It's we can feel that lean forward energy, and it's a little bit desperate. Instead, to really lean back, energetically lean back. Be in your throne, be in your hips. Let yourself really be rested in your own being. Begin to walk as if you were a queen. I love to imagine Queen Nefertiti, the Egyptian queen that had that long hat. Do you know what I'm talking about? So I imagine myself in that, but maybe you have a tiara on, whatever serves you, and to really walk around, just around your own apartment as if you were a queen and just start to embody that energy and just start to notice, like go to your grocery store, but walk around with your energetic crown on. And just notice the way that people see you. Notice the way that you show up. And then, yes, on top of that, I invite you to, instead of maybe like little yoga shorts, wear long, flowy skirts. This is going to make you feel more feminine. This is more of that goddess energy. Instead of maybe wearing a lot of makeup, can you go a little bit more natural? Instead of maybe putting your hair in a really tight ponytail, can you let it out? So it's not so much about looking feminine, but it's feeling feminine. And feeling feminine comes from you feeling comfortable, comes from you feeling natural. It comes from flow. Because when you feel that, you start to move that, and then you start to be that, you start to create that. And so it's really all an inner job. So I'm curious which of these tips resonated with you. Share with me in a review. And as a free gift, I will send you my womb meditation. This is a quick 8-minute meditation you can do to connect to your sacred womb space and receive her answers. So all you got to do is on your phone, wherever you're listening to this, look up the podcast app, type in Highest Self Podcast, and scroll to the bottom, write a review, take a screenshot, and email it over to me at sahara@iamsahararose.com. You can find that email and all of the links mentioned today in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was such a pleasure sharing this space with you, and I am so grateful. Be sure to subscribe so we can stay in tune for future episodes. Namaste.
Trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance. Close your eyes and listen. Surrender, let go. So trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance. Close your